Some netizens posted a video saying that this is the third kindergarten near their home to close, all of which have been open for over 10 years. In the video, many parents gathered in a kindergarten that was about to close down, all asking for tuition fees. There are also directors of closed kindergartens who have disclosed their current situation. My kindergarten closed down and ended up with a loss of $2 million. In 2018, I invested in my first kindergarten, which ended up being transferred at a low price. In 2020, the investment in the amusement park project ended in losses. In 2021, I invested in catering and eventually transferred it at a low price. In the same year, I took over the second kindergarten and announced its closure in 2024. Right now, all business went to zero. In recent years, with the decrease in the number of women of childbearing age and the impact of the epidemic, China's birth population has continued to decline, followed by a sharp decline in the number of children enrolled in kindergarten. According to data from the Ministry of Education, the number of kindergartens decreased from 294,800 to 274,400 from 2021 to 2023. And 20,000 were closed within 2 years. This significant decrease mainly occurred in private kindergartens. Shenzhen International School Yingwet Preschool School issued an enrollment announcement in June and confidently said it had hired a foreign principal. However, in July, it suddenly announced that it would stop all enrollment and would no longer continue to run the school. Except for first-tier cities, the number of applicants in the Chengdu high-tech zone, which once had a limited number of students, did not even reach a fraction of the number of students. The wave of kindergarten closures began last year. This data from the Education Bureau shows that the number of kindergartens in China fell last year for the first time in 15 years, and the wave of kindergarten closures will continue in the next 3 years. The number of newborns in the past years has dropped sharply in 2020. This year, they have just reached kindergarten. There are not enough students and many kindergartens have to close down. Fewer people will be born in 2021 and 2022, so the wave of kindergarten closures will continue in the next 2 years. Oh my gosh, this is the second parent this year who came to tell me that the kindergarten class has been disbanded. The last one was a private kindergarten, but it couldn't continue running, so he asked me to help him find a kindergarten to join. 2 days ago, another parent's situation was even more outrageous. I was admitted to the kindergarten this year, but the class was dissolved before it started. Our parent's child is enrolling in a model kindergarten in front of his home this year. You must know there are still specific requirements for admission to public kindergartens in Shanghai. After a series of operation registration verifications, the child was successfully admitted, initially a happy thing. A few days ago, the kindergarten suddenly informed me that there weren't enough enrollments and the daycare class could not be opened. This is Shanghai's highest level public demonstration garden and it has no students. This year, not only in Shanghai, but also in many kindergartens have encountered difficulties recruiting students. Some kindergartens in Shanghai have also lowered the admission requirements. For example, if the parents do not have a residence permit but they have a residence registration certificate, they can still be admitted. This year is like this, and it's hard to imagine what it'll be like next year. It's reported that some kindergartens chose to transform after encountering operating difficulties. The Beiyuan community in Wuchang District, Jinhua City, Zhejiang Province was built in the 1990s. The Beiyuan No. 1 kindergarten in the community has been recruiting students since 1998. In previous years, as soon as the enrollment announcement was issued, it was full on the same day. However, when enrollment began in the fall of 2022, the situation worsened, with only a few people signing up on the first day. Data shows the birth rate in Wuchang district of Jinhua was 5.43% last year, a decrease of 0.47% from 2022. By May 2023, only one newborn was registered in Chengdong Street. The director said that the kindergarten had a hard time organizing 2 classes last year. There were many elderly people in the community, and there was a lack of professional healthcare institutions, so it was decided to turn it into a nursing home. In October last year, the exterior walls of the kindergarten were repainted and elderly care services were officially launched. The phenomenon of returning from young to old is not limited to Jinhua. Similar transformation pilots have also appeared in many cities across the country, such as in Shenzhen, Taiyuan, Jinan, and other places. This is in response to China's dual social changes of low birth rate and an aging population. Some analysts believe that the closure of kindergartens in large numbers is closely related to the lives of every Chinese person. At present, many kindergartens are facing difficulty recruiting students. Some have even offered group admission to attract students, and some have reduced tuition. Public kindergartens, which once had high standards, are starting to lower their standards, and some have even opened up social enrollment. As long as the children come, it's fine. This reflects the severe survival crisis of kindergartens. According to the latest statistics from the Ministry of Education, there were 289,200 kindergartens in the country in 2022. By 2023, this number became 274,400. In other words, 14,800 kindergartens closed down within 1 year. The reason is simple: there are fewer children. According to the same data from the Ministry of Education, in 2021, the number of children in kindergarten nationwide experienced negative growth for the first time, with a decrease of 30,000. The decrease will continue in 2022, with a decrease of 1.73 million people. By 2023, this number has dropped significantly, with 5.35 million fewer children in kindergarten. This reduction is equivalent to the entire population of Singapore. If we want to maintain the current scale of kindergartens, the average number of new births every year will reach 13.6 million. But the reality is that the number of new births in 2023 will only be 9.02 million. In the next 3 years, more kindergartens will close. What impact will the closure of kindergartens and changes in the number of children have on ordinary people? First, from a student perspective, does having fewer students mean that schooling is easier and less competitive? This is not the case. The blogger believes that from a national perspective, education has two main goals: screening and protection. Screening is to select outstanding talents, and the college entrance examination is this screening method. Therefore, the difficulty of the college entrance examination will not be reduced, and it will still be difficult to pass the college entrance examination. The guarantee is to ensure that all students can complete basic education and find a development path that suits them. Take the high school entrance examination as an example. The current vocational education diversion policy starts from the high school entrance examination. Some students will be diverted to vocational high schools to engage in technical jobs in the future. This ratio has remained between 5:5 and 6:4 in recent years, which is the so-called 50-50 split. In the future, these diverted students will also have the opportunity to enter vocational and technical universities. According to the experience of developed manufacturing countries such as Europe and Germany, the demand for skilled workers will be great in the future, and the income and benefits will also be very considerable. Therefore, the country will not let everyone go to ordinary high schools or take ordinary undergraduate examinations. In the future, relevant policies may become more stringent. For example, this year's high school entrance examination policy in Hua'an, Jiangsu requires that 10 points must reduce the total score of repeat students before admission. Next year, it may be reduced by 20 points. At the same time, repeat students are also restricted from applying to key high schools in Jiangsu. This means you only have one chance to take the high school entrance examination. If you don't get into a regular high school, you have to choose a technical major. There will still be opportunities for development in the future, therefore competition for admission to high schools and universities will remain fierce for a long time. The blogger also believes that the current situation has a great impact on employment. The kindergarten closed down, so where do these teachers go? In the future, primary and junior high schools may also face the same reduction problem. So how will these teachers choose? According to data from the Ministry of Education, there were 3.2442 million preschool education teachers in 2022. By 2023, this number dropped to 3.0737 million, a decrease of 170,000. Although there is no specific data on where these teachers have gone, according to media reports, some teachers have chosen to take the civil service examination, work in self-media, and even start live broadcasts to sell goods. Predictions from Beijing Normal University show that by 2035, 1.5 million primary school teachers and 370,000 secondary school teachers may change careers. How big is the impact of this shift? In 2021, we have seen an example of the transformation of education and training institutions. After the double reduction policy was implemented, teachers from New Oriental and TAL entered the live streaming industry in large numbers. and even phenomenal figures like Dong Yuhui emerged. In 2 years, former New Oriental teachers sold merchandise worth 15 billion yuan. However, in contrast, 95.2% of live streamers earn less than 5,000 yuan per month. According to data from II Media Research, in 2023, the income of live streaming anchors dropped by 30% compared to the previous year. It can be seen from these data that if there is no certain cultural foundation in the future, it may be difficult to compete with teachers who have changed careers in live broadcasting. Although the live broadcast industry has its particularities, it is foreseeable that the decrease in the new population will profoundly affect the pattern of multiple industries. Maternal and infant, milk powder, early childhood education, toys, children's clothing, stationery, school district housing, and other child-related industries, as well as related upstream and downstream industry chains, may face the impact of teachers changing careers. The same situation will also occur in other industries. Employees will enter other industries after losing their jobs, leading to intensified competition. And this series of chain reactions will eventually affect everyone, and it's not directly related to whether everyone has children. Outsiders believe that the reasons behind the large number of kindergarten closures are the declining birth rate, employment difficulties for young people, and the government's suppression of for-profit educational institutions. In the past, parents would wait in long lines at the door to get a high-quality kindergarten spot for their children, but now these kindergartens are worried about recruiting enough students. In 2023, the number of children enrolled in preschool education nationwide will decrease by 5 million, with the total number falling to 40.92 million, the lowest level since 2014. At the same time, more than 170,000 full-time preschool teacher positions disappeared. Parents are also struggling with financial pressures. For example, Ms. Li and her husband in Jiangsu province are considering sending their 2-year-old daughter to a public or a private kindergarten. She admitted that the quality of education was important, but they had already spent a lot of money on their daughter and could not afford the financial burden of having another child. The problem of falling birth rates is even more serious. Last year, China's population experienced an unexpected sharp decline. The number of new births dropped to 9.02 million, a decrease of 540,000 from 2022. At the same time, the number of deaths increased to 11.1 million, 690,000 more than the previous year. Shanghai's total fertility rate in 2023 is reported to be only 0.6, which is at a global low. This data means that each woman of childbearing age will have an average of only 0.6 children, far lower than China's average level of 1 and South Korea's fertility rate. Shanghai's new statistics are expected to set a new record for a metropolitan area with the lowest fertility rate in the world. Some analysts point out that if this trend continues, without population inflow, it will only take 5 generations for Shanghai, a metropolis with a population of more than 20 million, to drop its population to 100,000. Reasons for this low fertility rate include the high cost of raising children, heavy financial burden, satisfaction with life, age or physical reasons, etc. Especially in Shanghai, the cost of raising a child to 18 is as high as 1 million yuan, the highest in the country. The low fertility rate has further increased the burden of elderly care in Shanghai. As of the end of 2022, the proportion of the elderly population aged 65 and above in Shanghai has reached 18.7%. Which is higher than the national average, and the dependency ratio of the elderly population has also continued to rise. Although Shanghai has introduced childcare subsidies, housing subsidies, and the inclusion of assisted reproductive medical services and medical insurance to encourage childbirth, experts generally believe these policies are insufficient. The incentive mechanism is misaligned, making it difficult to increase the fertility rate effectively. Data shows that the one-child rate of Shanghai's registered population is 74.03%, the second-child rate is 24.02%, and the third-child and fourth-child rates are only 1.84% and 0.11% respectively. Faced with the current predicament, the Chinese government seeks long-term solutions, including measures to encourage marriage and restrict divorce. However, the effectiveness of these measures remains to be seen. The government has also taken specific actions such as expanding the size of public schools, subsidizing eligible private schools, and encouraging more schools to enroll children under the age of 3. Researchers believe that the current kindergarten crisis may allow China to improve its childcare environment. After all, the cost of raising children is still high compared with income. According to a report released by the Beijing think tank Yuhua Population Research in February this year, the cost of raising a child from birth to 18 years old in China is 6.3 times per capita GDP, ranking second in the world after South Korea. Although China ended its one-child policy in 2016, the fertility rate has declined for 7 consecutive years. In recent years, the number of births in China has dropped sharply from 17.58 million in 2017 to 9.02 million in 2023. The number of newborns is expected to decrease further in 2024. Regarding the population issue, some analysts pointed out that in the 1970s, the CCP used the strict one-child policy to forcibly control population growth, which led to unprecedented distortions in China's population structure. Although it seems to have reduced resource consumption and increased the labor-to-population ratio in the short term, the long-term negative impact of this policy is emerging. As the population continues to decrease, the labor force and number of women of childbearing age are declining, and the problem of social aging is becoming increasingly serious. China may fall into profound socio-economic difficulties in the future. Not only that, but the harsh socio-economic environment in China today has also led to a sharp decline in the desire to have children. Young couples generally feel that they cannot afford to have children. The budget to raise a child is close to 500,000 yuan. Coupled with the high education expenses such as school district housing, summer camps, and study abroad, it's even more prohibitive. At the same time, young people are facing a severe employment situation. In early 2024, the unemployment rate for young people aged 16 to 24 reached more than 15%. Some young people even said in despair, "The era of the powerful oppressing and exploiting the people at the bottom is over with me, and I will not have any more children." This heartfelt cry expresses the helplessness and resistance of the current young generation in China towards the future. A recent United Nations report predicts that China's population will plummet from 1.4 billion to 639 million by the end of this century. This figure is significantly lower than the prediction 2 years ago. This means China's global population share will drop from 1/3 in history to only 6%. What is even more serious is the deformation of the population structure. By 2050, the proportion of China's population over 65 years old will reach 31%, and by 2100, this proportion will be close to 46% of the total population, almost twice the US forecast for the same period. The rapid change in China's population is like a huge crisis, like a gray rhinoceros approaching every Chinese. Members of the Chinese People's Political Consultative Conference pointed out that the aging phenomena in rural areas is serious and there is a lack of social security which urgently needs to be improved. Officials discussed how to solve the problem of sources of pension funds and the shortage of beds in nursing institutions. China's concerns about aging are nothing new, but the sharp decline in the newborn population in 2023 makes this crisis imminent. Experts predict that by 2050, China will inevitably face an aging crisis. By then, each elderly person can only rely on the support of 1.5 laborers, and both parties will be under tremendous economic and social pressure. Some experts call for measures to be taken as soon as possible, such as delaying retirement, increasing pension sources, encouraging childbirth, etc. Pessimists believe this crisis is unavoidable, and the government can only slow down its impact as much as possible. By 2050, the number of elderly people in China will exceed that of the US and the European Union combined. This means China will need more resources to care for the elderly with a significantly reduced labor force. The reduction in the labor force and the increase in the proportion of the elderly will aggravate the pension gap and impose a heavy burden on society. It's already difficult for young people to live independently, and they are even less willing to have children. At the same time, the elderly have relatively reduced consumption, ultimately weakening economic vitality in a vicious cycle.